Farm Week is a production of the Mississippi State University Extension Service.
Today on Farm Week, it's a feature story edition of our show. We'll go back to the farm economic crisis in the 1980s. At that time, the football coach at the University of Iowa decided to launch his America Needs Farmers campaign.
In Southern Gardening, Gary Bachman will show us some fall flowers that perform well this time of year.
Our first feature story today is about renewable energy. You'll meet a man who's turning waste into watts. He's generating electricity using pig manure.
The raw manure goes down to the digester where we've got bacteria, lots of bacteria. And what the bacteria does is actually breaks the manure down and it comes out liquid. Every day I feed about 1/4 of a pit to the digester, and every day the hogs replace it. That is renewable.
Good day, everyone. I'm Leighton Spann.
And I'm Artis Ford. Welcome to Farm Week.
Today it's an all-feature edition of our show.
Leighton, our first feature story today is about a hog farmer that has the vision of the future where that hog waste is being turned into fuel. One producer in Nebraska has found a way to generate his own electricity and some for his neighbors. At the same time, he's reducing emissions of a key greenhouse gas. Harvest Public Media's Perry Stoner explains how the innovative operation converts waste into watts.
Danny Cluthy runs a family hog operation in rural Dodge, Nebraska. Step inside one of the barns and you'll see and hear it's like many hog operations in the state.
You know, my job is to get them little pigs fat and get them to market.
The little pigs weigh 12 pounds or so when they come to Cluthy's facility. 5 or 6 months later, he's cared for them enough they are ready to go to market, weighing 20 times more than when they arrived.
These hogs are treated better than humans. I mean, their diet is to a T for their age. Fresh water, fresh air. They sleep with a grin on their face.
With about 7,500 hogs typically on hand, a lot goes into fattening them up. That means there's a lot that comes out of them, too. It's manure, and that's where Cluthy's operation becomes unlike any other in the state. The waste of hogs and other farm animals create high levels of the greenhouse gas methane. Methane can last more than a decade in the atmosphere and is 20 times more powerful than carbon dioxide as a contributor to climate warming. But Cluthy is taking steps to make his farm an environmental game changer.
What I really call this thing is a manure processing system with the byproduct being electricity.
Hogs create an average of more than a gallon of manure each day. All told, Cluthy's hogs generate over 9,000 gallons, enough to fill a gas tanker every day of the year. Down the hill from the hog barns is a pit. An underground pipe system uses gravity so the manure flows downhill. Manure collected in a pit is common at hog operations, but what happens in this pit is not. This 14-foot deep airtight tank is called a methane digester. There are about 150 of them on farms in the United States, but Cluthy's is the only one in Nebraska.
The raw manure goes down to the digester where we've got bacteria, lots of bacteria. And what the bacteria does is actually breaks the manure down and it comes out liquid. Every day I feed about 1/4 of a pit to the digester, and every day the hogs replace it. That is renewable.
The digester is heated to about 100 degrees. That's ideal for the bacteria to break down the manure and release methane gas, a process that takes about 3 weeks. The pit traps the methane in its oxygen-free environment. Cluthy then uses the methane as a fuel to run farm utilities.
The methane gas gets sucked up here to the 3306 cat engine that's running a generator. It runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I always say this cat engine just purrs on this methane.
The Caterpillar engine sits in its own small building. Designed to use either methane or propane as fuel, the engine produces electricity and it's put on the electrical grid, completing the manure to electricity process. Cluthe started dreaming of this facility in 2003, but wasn't producing electricity until more than 2 years later, due mostly to the permitting process. Nebraska Public Power now buys the energy from Cluthe's family energy company. But generating electricity from hog manure isn't financially what it could be. Customer generators in Nebraska, like Cluthe, can produce up to 25 kilowatts. Above that amount, they are paid what's called avoided cost from the utility. In simple terms, he's paid the utility's wholesale cost of electricity. The 25 kilowatts allowed in Nebraska is among the lowest in the nation. In the end, the break-even point for Cluthe's system is at least 15 years.
We actually make enough electricity here to take care of about 45 to 50 homes a year. I would use about 20% of the production and sell 80%. For a byproduct, we actually got a lot of electricity here. Anybody in Cumming County that turns their lights on doesn't know the difference whether it's coming from Cooper Nuclear or Olean Energy.
They're creating greenhouse gases, actually creating a very potent greenhouse gas, so you don't want that to escape. And so it's really important to capture as much of that methane as you can.
For biological systems engineers like Rick Stoll and Crystal Powers, finding ways to utilize what might otherwise be waste is a scientific process that helps make agriculture more sustainable.
In each step of the process, from growing your forages and grains for your livestock to feeding the animal to within the manure, how do we capture as much energy in each step? And anaerobic digesters fit in there because we're figuring out how to get more energy out of that manure before it's ultimately used as fertilizer.
Livestock manure is used as fertilizer for crop agriculture. Methane-free manure is too, and Cluthe says it's odorless. Livestock waste odor is found offensive by some, and it is occasionally the grounds for lawsuits. Ryan McGee is with the USDA's Agricultural Research Service. In the lab, he's examining what happens to the manure in the different stages of Cluthe's process.
So these samples are from the pit, which are essentially green, raw manure, very little treatment. Then the next step is after it's been digested through the anaerobic digester, which is a basic flow of treatment at the Cluthe site.
We're asking them to look at solids content, the organic matter, how that's breaking down. That would tell us how well the digester is performing. And then we're also very interested in what's the likelihood of gases coming off that would cause odors. And the assumption is that the digester is going to break down those and reduce the likelihood of odorous gases and other undesired gases coming off.
Livestock production can have another serious negative environmental impact: water contamination.
85% of our population in Nebraska relies on groundwater for drinking water. If waste gets into water, it's likely to cause a problem. I mean, that's the whole purpose of our livestock permitting program, is to keep livestock waste out of the waters of the state, the groundwater, the streams, the rivers, and the lakes and the reservoirs.
Marty Link is Water Quality Associate Director with the Nebraska Department of Environmental Quality. She says harm to drinking water isn't the only concern if livestock waste gets in the water.
When it runs off into a stream, it can cause the algae to get all excited, and it gets all this nutrients and it starts growing a lot. And so there's an algae bloom. The algae bloom takes up a lot of oxygen. Oxygen is all depleted then from the water, and the fish won't have the oxygen in order to breathe, and they may die. That's a worst case scenario. Accidents happen, but well-managed waste should not make it into the stream.
You know, now all of the effluent that goes down the lagoon is odorless. So really it's just kind of a nice, pretty lake out there.
At Danny Cluthe's hog operation, he can still use the manure waste as fertilizer after capturing the methane to be a fuel source. He likes that the digester helps him be a good neighbor.
We've got a track record, and now we've got something that, you know, other producers can come and look at and say, wow.
It's a costly endeavor Cluthe could only make happen with grants that totaled hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's one of the barriers in front of more livestock producers wanting to do what Cluthe has, but he's not done. Another grant will provide about 1/4 of the funding to install a scrubber that will remove methane impurities and leave propane. He estimates the additional use of the manure byproduct could eliminate his annual energy costs of $30,000.
And I'm excited about the fact that we'll be able to heat our barns, dry our corn, whatever we use propane for now, we're going to be using methane. And will this solve our oil crisis? Probably not, but it's a piece of the puzzle.
For Market to Market, I'm Perry Stoner.
If you're interested in watching this story again, go to our Farm Week website. That's farmweek.msucares.com. You can also watch it again on our Facebook and YouTube pages. We'll also have links to the Market to Market website where you can see the story as well and read the script. That's farmweek.msucares.com. And Leighton, one thing in that story, it mentioned about the fact that Mr. Cluthe has a grant that's helped him to put this in. And,
right.
And that's not unusual trying to get these cutting edge things started. I mean, even for the big companies, they're getting loan guarantees and grants and such from the Department of Energy. So they're trying to get these sorts of things on the ground to get them going and then work the kinks out, and hopefully other people could take advantage too. But that being said, here we are in a time of poor economic activity. Taxes are down, all that kind of stuff. So funding these sorts of things is problematic as well from the state and federal government side. So.
Right. Well, it's time now for today's trivia quiz on Farm Week. It is about how much effort it takes to produce honey. And we're not talking about the beekeeper, but the bee. Here's the question. How many bees does it take to produce 1 tablespoon of honey? Is the answer 5, 12, 22, or 35? I'll have that answer after today's Southern Gardening segment.
Well, fall is here, but there are still options for color and interest in the landscape. In this week's Southern Gardening segment, Extension horticulturist Dr. Gary Bachman shows us some of his favorite cool season flower plants.
It's the cool season, and there are still options to add color and interest to your landscape. Let's take a look at some of my fall favorites. Today I'm at Dogwood Ridge Farms in Poplarville, where Barbara and Mike Levy are growing a variety of great cool season landscape plants. A favorite bedding plant that is related to pansy is the viola. Violas are good choices for both landscape and containers. The penny citrus mix is a prolific flower producer. The flowers are displayed above the compact foliage in a way that says, "Hey, look at me." Flower colors include cream, orange, primrose, yellow, and yellow frost. I really like the penny azure, which is a gorgeous white and bright blue flower with purple streaks. Since moving to South Mississippi, Telstar dianthus has become one of my very favorite cool season plants. There are varieties of colors that include carmine rose, pink, and purple picote. Picote describes a flower having a lighter or darker edge. Telstar dianthus will be 8 to 10 inches tall and wide and will tolerate cooler temperatures. The Telstar dianthus is a great partner with either pansy or viola. These pairings can maintain interest from fall through the following spring. For foliage interest in the cool season, consider pink chablis spotted dead nettle. Known botanically as Lamium maculatum, pink chablis is a low-maintenance landscape plant. The leaves are a frothy confection of silver and green with cotton candy pink flowers that bloom well into the cool season. This is also a great spiller plant for combination containers. You can't go wrong with these fall favorites to add color and interest to your cool season landscape. I'm Gary Bachman for Southern Gardening.
Gary says adding color to your landscape in the fall is easy. You just have to choose the right plants.
Well, it's time now for the answer to today's trivia quiz on Farm Week. How many bees does it take to produce 1 tablespoon of honey? Well, the answer is 12. That's according to the National Farm City Council. The council says it keeps these 12 bees busy. They have to visit 2,000 flowers to collect enough nectar for 1 tablespoon of honey. Now, think about how many flowers would be needed for a quart jar.
We're going to pause now for a break on Farm Week. Coming up, we'll have the calendar and one more feature story for you. The University of Iowa and the state's farming community paid tribute recently to a time when the football team reminded the nation that America needs farmers.
Prepared? You bet. We wouldn't think of heading out on our adventure without the right gear and supplies. We have to be able to endure some heat and get through a few unexpected storms, but we work through those together. We may have some steep hills to climb, but we know we're ready. Of course we prepared for our marriage. Until death do us part.
Before we get back to our last story, let's look at the Farm Week calendar. Mississippi State University's annual row crop short course takes place December 5th through the 7th on campus in Starkville at the Boss Conference Center. Now, the time for free early registration is past. It will cost you $40 at the door now, but it's still worth it. This meeting will save or make you money. The agenda includes Kip Cullers of Missouri, who we've had here on Farm Week. He's the holder of the soybean yield world record. We'll have registration and agenda information on the Farm Week calendar. A biomass and bioenergy short course takes place Thursday, December 8th. The location is the Grenada County office of the Mississippi State University Extension Service. This is for landowners, businesses, or local governments interested in learning about the basics and the economics of woody biomass energy. Registration is $35 per person or $50 per couple. You need to register by Thursday, December 1st. We will have a link on the Farm Week calendar to help you. Go to our Farm Week website at farmweek.msucares.com for information on these and other events. Now check out this Farm Week snapshot.
Our last feature story today takes us back to the farm economic crisis of the 1980s. It was a time of extremely high interest rates and farm foreclosures. For farmers, it probably still ranks as the worst economic time since the Great Depression. At that time, the America Needs Farmers campaign sprang up in the Midwest, but it wasn't started by a farmer. Give the credit to the University of Iowa's football coach. Market to Market's Laurel Bauer-Bergmeyer reports.
The University of Iowa Athletics Department and the Iowa Farm Bureau reached deep into the old playbook recently, reviving a campaign initiated nearly 3 decades ago. America Needs Farmers, or ANF, was launched in 1985 by legendary Iowa football coach Hayden Fry.
Over the middle, and Hayden Fry's that up, baby. And the Hawkeyes have taken the lead.
Iowa was the nation's top-ranked team for several weeks that season. The Hawkeyes won the Big Ten championship and advanced to the Rose Bowl. But even as jubilant fans reveled in their team's success, rural America was gripped in what came to be known as the farm crisis, a prolonged economic downturn that drove thousands from the land. Hayden Fry knew the crisis affected not only his players, many of whom hailed from farming communities, but also thousands of Iowa fans whose livelihoods relied heavily on a strong rural economy.
That's why they're rated #1.
It was tragic. It was terrible, closing down farms and people hurting. And of course, I'd recruited quite a few farm boys on my football team, and they're salt of the earth. They wanted an education. They were hungry. They were well disciplined. They were very strong because they'd been working on the farm. And so I came up with the idea that America needs to know that the farmers need help. And so I came up with the idea of ANF decal, America Needs Farmers. And it was amazing the great response we got, not only in Iowa, but across the nation.
When Hayden came to us, it was basically a no-brainer. Why not do it? Why not support the people who have been supporting us?
Mike and I were both team captains in 1985, and Hayden approached us with this idea during a time that was really a rough time for farmers, literally in America, but especially here in Iowa. And he came up with the ANF logo, America Needs Farmers. as a way to support the farming community. And back then, you know, Iowa didn't have a lot of big corporate sponsors or anything like that. It was literally the individual farmer who came to the games, who wrote a check every year to the football program that was the heart and soul of the community of Hawks.
The farm crisis of the 1980s devastated the agricultural sector. As commodity and land prices collapsed, thousands of farmers went bankrupt and were forced to sell their land in an economic crisis that rivaled the Great Depression.
Banks closed, banks forced farmers to sell their livestock herds to help pay for the operation, and we basically lost a generation my age in the 1980s. And see, I'm 60 today.
Craig Lane, president of Iowa Farm Bureau, eagerly endorsed reviving A&F as part of a partnership between his organization and the University of Iowa. A fifth-generation farmer from Brooklyn, Iowa, Lang knows all too well the trials his family experienced during the farm crisis.
We were the same kind of family as a lot of them. We bought a farm that was high-priced in 1983. We chose to keep that farm, but it was difficult. We believed it was, we paid for the farm, we should keep it. But I remember my wife and I personally, we had interest rates that had started out at around 8-9%, which we thought was affordable, but they grew to 19-20%.
While the A&F logo was developed during one of the worst economic times in agricultural history, today's farmers face a new set of challenges. Lang points out that even though producers currently enjoy favorable prices for most major commodities, they also must contend with soaring input costs. That's why the Iowa Farm Bureau and the University of Iowa decided to revive the campaign, and current Iowa head coach Kirk Ferentz followed in his predecessor's footsteps by putting A&F back on the players' helmets. To celebrate the return of A&F, the university and the Farm Bureau declared October 15th A&F Day at famed Kinnick Stadium in Iowa City. The ceremonies featured special activities prior to kickoff of the nationally televised game between Iowa and Northwestern. Market to Market caught up with a couple former Hawkeye players to get their impressions of A&F.
Well, that's how I grew up. I was a farm kid, and I realized the importance of farming, not only to myself, but to the state and to the country. And what better way to support such a great cause?
It's a Hawkeye trademark. Coach Fry started it and put a stamp on it, and really brought it to life. But now that we're trying to get it going again, and me being a farmer now and owning some farmland, it really strikes home because it is an issue, and we need to get more farmers out there.
The highlight of A&F Day was the University of Iowa's first card stunt. On cue, 70,000 fans in 4 grandstands held up colored cards to reveal a patriotic display of red, white, and blue, and the iconic America Needs Farmers logo.
What's really important about this promotion is that it allows us an opportunity to talk about the good things we do. We build leaders. Our young people grow up on the farm. They learn about teamwork. They learn about citizenship. They learn about respect to parents, respect to teachers, and all those things. And so it's very important to us from a perspective to take that A&F logo and promote the value of that, and hopefully it'll rub off on a lot of people.
Rural America has come a long ways since the farm crisis of the 1980s. But Lang and Fry still believe A&F is just as relevant today as it was 25 years ago, because America does, in fact, need farmers.
Well, actually, the A&F today may be more important than it was back in 1985 and during the 80s, during the economic depression. Because there's less farmers today. More people have moved to the big cities and given up farming, and they've lived an extremely hard life. But the ones that have survived, that have hung in there, do a great, great job, and they need to be recognized for what they've done for America and for the world.
For Market to Market, I'm Laurel Bauer-Bergmeyer.
If you're interested in watching this story again, go to the Farm Week website, farmweek.msucares.com. You can also find us on Facebook and YouTube. We will also have links to the Market to Market website where you can see the story as well and read the script. Again, that website of ours is farmweek.msucares.com. And Artis, I think he's right. That kind of campaign is maybe more important today.
I think he is right. I had a friend of mine that was raising cattle during that time period. He said, I thought I could grow cattle borrowing money at 20+%. He said, I was wrong. Well, we are at the end of Farm Week for this week. On our next show, the late winter, early spring is a good time in the South for prescribed burning.
Because of its potential for harm, planning ahead is essential. Prescribed burning can increase timber growth, and wildlife actually benefit from it as well.
In southern gardening, roses, there are a lot of varieties that aren't difficult to grow. And if you'd like further information on a Farm Week story, you have an idea to suggest to us, get in touch with us. If you want to write us, our address is Farm Week Box 9625, Mississippi State, Mississippi 39762. That's Box 9625, Mississippi State, Mississippi 39762. Our telephone number is 662-325-2262. Of course, there's always Facebook and YouTube. You can also get in touch with us through your county extension service office of the Mississippi State University Extension Service. For the rest of the Farm Week crew, I'm Artis Ford.
And I'm Leighton Spann. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week.